So Tucker Carlson is gone from Fox News. I know, what a great surprise. My name's John F. Gately. Welcome back to the show. This broke just today, midday, on the East Coast, just about lunchtime. And an amazing story, because at the end of his Friday, he said, we'll see you back on Monday. He gave a speech at the Heritage Foundation over the weekend where he went to work 32 years, 1991, I think he started at the Heritage Foundation, and there was no hint of this coming, so kind of rocked the whole Twitter world and the conservative media world. Really just a huge surprise. This seems to me as like a James O'Keefe moment for Tucker Carlson. In other words, what I mean to say is that Tucker Carlson is bigger than Fox News. And just like James O'Keefe, he can go build himself his own media company or do whatever he wants after this, because he doesn't need Fox News anymore. It's hard to say of whether or not this was a contract dispute and whether Tucker's contract was coming up. We don't have those details. We don't actually have a detail of whether or not he was fired, or whether he quit, or whether he was quit fired. As my old friend John would, an old friend, you said, did you get quit fired? And so it's kind of uncertain how that would be, but why Fox News would let basically their number one guy go seems to be like really hard to fathom. Also, right after the Tucker news was the news that Don Lemon, or Don Lemon, as Tucker would call him, got fired from CNN. So we do know CNN actually fired Don Lemon shortly after the Tucker news broke. And for me, I think that news is much more like a Matt Lauer banishment. I don't think you'll see anybody really picking up Don Lemon on any meaningful channel. I mean, I don't even think MSNBC will pick him up. I mean, Don could get a YouTube channel. I mean, they even give them to people like me. Or maybe you see him doing some type of podcast on Spotify or something. But the Don Lemon firing, that's the like goodbye. You're out of here. That doesn't have a lot of upside for Don. He is a goner. So this also comes on the heels last week, of course, of, Dan Bongino? He departed Fox News in what most certainly was a contract dispute. He tweeted that out. He says, we were here, they were there, and they couldn't come to terms financially. So Bongino out at Fox News. I think that's kind of a side note to this. But what's also important last week is that the Dominion lawsuit settled, and maybe Tucker was waiting for that to happen. Really hard to say. There are a lot of opportunities for Tucker to go from here. And I think that it was Glenn Beck, prior of, I think, 8 p.m. Fox News host, who really led the charge on this. And Glenn Beck, the whole, what was it, Mercury Network or whatever he has there, was a trailblazer in this. And how long has he been gone from Fox News? I mean, you could definitely argue that his profile is down from when he was on Fox News, because he was like a rock star when he was on Fox News. But he's not out. And he's grown this whole media conglomerate for himself down in Texas or whatever. So there's that Glenn Beck model. There's the Russell Brand YouTube model. Emma Chamberlain, she's now on Spotify, where Joe Rogan is. So there's a whole lot of opportunity out there. There is Rumble. In fact, Dave Rubin tweeted out, hey, Tucker, why don't you come over to Rumble? Where I think that Rumble and Locals, which I think Dave founded Locals, those two things merged, and certainly Rumble is having I'm not on Rumble, but maybe I should be. And those two things are kind of coming together. I'm focusing on this channel here on YouTube to start with. And maybe those two things are coming together as a merger, as I understand it. And so Dave's trying to recruit Tucker there in kind of a half-joking tweet. But one thing that I think that Dave Rubin did point out was this interview that Tucker did at Dave Rubin's studio back in 2018. Listen.
I am glad to have you here, my friend.
I'm glad to be here. I love this.
I don't know that anyone has ever walked in here and been more impressed by the Rubin
Because I
report.
work in television, so I know what this is, and it's just the coolest thing I've seen in a long time.
Are you jealous?
Are you joking? Yes, I'm jealous.
You have millions and millions of viewers.
I drive across.
You have a massive staff.
But I don't have the control that you have, which is wonderful.
Yeah, control.
I don't have the control which you have. So Dave, this is, I think, when Dave was still in California, and Dave has a very impressive, what I think was a home studio, and Tucker was like super impressed. I remember seeing this back in 2018 or 2019 or whatever, and Tucker was super impressed because, you know, there's a lot goes into it. And Tucker was like, it's not so much the technical thing, while that was impressive, it's the fact that Dave can get up any single morning and say whatever he wants effectively, especially now that Dave's on Rumble, where, you know, YouTube kind of a little bit more censorship involved here on this platform. So, and I totally understand what Tucker's saying. You know, that's why I work completely for myself. I have a couple of real estate schools here in Massachusetts, and I own my own real estate agency. I have 35 agents, but I'm the boss, and it's the best thing I've ever done for myself ever. And, 9 years of doing it, and it's just it's nothing better than working completely for yourself. You don't have to justify anything to anybody other than your family because you're producing for them, right? And your customers. But you don't have any overhead or bureaucracy that you have to go through other than that you create for yourself. So there might be some huge upside. You can really see Tucker so impressed with the freedom that working for yourself gives you. Now, on the other hand, Tucker has very many times said that he's a writer who just happens to have a cable news show. And you might see Tucker step back from the day-to-day politics, which on a daily basis, he clearly disdains pretty much anything that goes on in Washington, D.C. on a day-to-day basis. So you might have him step back and just write books, or he could do the complete opposite. Maybe he runs for office, although he's many, many times said, you know, I'm not gonna run for office. That's not gonna happen. And then there's the other option, of course, that he could kind of retire like Johnny Carson style and just fade off into the distance, which, you know, leave them wanting for more. Like, who's the famous Dodger pitcher that retired? It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember. Who probably had a couple more seasons in him, but he retired at his peak. And not Satchel Paige. I can't. Sandy Koufax. And always so there could be that. It's hard to say. But the fervor that Tucker seems to have for the future of the country doesn't seem to have faded. And I think he's going to be back bigger and better, unlike Don Lemon, who I think is like, goodbye, Don, to the echo chambers of God knows where. He's toast. But I think Tucker has huge upside. Like these other people I mentioned, Joe Rogan, Emma Chamberlain, Russell Brand, all of those people, Glenn Beck. I think Tucker has that type of independent media, James O'Keefe platform, bigger than all of those people that I just mentioned because of the truth that he speaks. Now, very interesting speech Tucker gave last week or this past weekend at the Heritage Foundation, where, again, he started working in 1991. Listen.
Assess the terms we use to describe what we're watching. So when I started at Heritage, the presumption was, and this is a very Anglo-American assumption, that the debates we're having are kind of rational debates about the way to get to mutually agreed upon outcomes. Right? So like we all want the country to be more prosperous and free and people to be less oppressed or whatever, and so we're going to argue about tax rates, and I think higher tax gets us there. I'm like Keynesian, and you disagree, you're an Austrian, or whatever. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers, and they write their papers, and may the best papers win. I don't think that's what we're watching now at all. I don't think we're watching a debate over how to get to the best outcome. I think that's completely wrong. And I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me, because I don't.
So what basically Tucker is saying here is that nothing is on the level, which we probably could have figured out on our own, but we're not really engaging in a marketplace of ideas where it used to be, like when you watched back in the 80s, say you watched This Week with David Brinkley, which is a show that was on ABC in the Sunday mornings. And you'd have this guy on from the Democrats, you'd have this guy on from the Republicans, and they were arguing over the middle. They were arguing over, just like Tucker said, what should the tax rate be? Should it be 11 or should it be 11 and a half? And that's what the debate was basically about. We have a peace dividend. Should we spend it on colleges or should we spend on the deficit? It was that type of debate. It was not polarized. It was kind of in the middle, and neither side was inherently good or evil. They were just trying to advance the interest of the country. And those debates that we used to watch on shows like David Brinkley on Sunday morning was where the country was at. There was a vast middle, and we were just kind of, in any pretty much election or debate, in the marketplace of ideas, just kind of tinkering about how should we fine-tune our republic. Now, Tucker goes into a much more, he diverges for a minute in this freestyle speech he gives at the Heritage Foundation, and then finally comes out to explain that what we are actually looking at is a fundamental battle between good and evil.
Calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true. It is. And evil is characterized by their opposites. Violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. So if you are all in on the things that produce the latter basket of outcomes, what you're really advocating for is evil. That's just true. I'm not calling for a religious war, far from it. I'm merely calling for an acknowledgement of what we're watching, which is not what, and I'm certainly not backing the Republican Party. I mean, ugh. I'm not making a partisan point at all. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s are caught in the past in the way that we think about this. One side's like, no, I've got this idea, and we've got this idea, and let's have a debate about our ideas. They don't want a debate. Those ideas won't produce outcomes that any rational person would want under any circumstances. Those are manifestations of some larger force acting upon us. It's just so obvious. It's completely obvious. And I think two things. One, we should say that and stop engaging in these totally fraudulent debates where we are using the terms that we used in 1991 when I started at Heritage, as if maybe, I could just win the debate if I marshaled more facts. I've tried that, doesn't work. And two, maybe we should all take just like 10 minutes a day to say a...
All right, so what Tucker is basically saying here is that what we're talking about in America is a fundamental difference between good and evil. That this is not a debate in the middle about marginal tax rates. It's a battle, a theological battle in a way, even though he's not calling for war, but at least an ideological, philosophical, theological battle. That means everything. That means everything. That means the fundamental essence of the country is what this battle means. This is not about tax rates. It's about whether or not we have a country and what it means to be America. That's what the battle is. A lot of us think on a daily basis that, why do you make this podcast? Why do you make these videos, Jack? Because me and like a gazillion million other people, we're here to save the country. And you are too. I think that's why you're watching. You're here to save the country. That's what this is all about. It's not about marginal tax rates. And if we have debates based upon that, we're never going to win, just like Tucker says. It's to save the country, the fundamental principles that it was founded upon. That's why we make these videos. That's why you watch. That's why you're in the comments. That's why you maybe make your own videos and make some more. But that's why we're in this battle. That's why we fight to save the country. And I'm extremely eager to find out what Tucker does next. We have not heard from Tucker. We had a very short, brief statement from Fox today. Very brief statement from Fox, but not from Tucker. That will be widely anticipated. He probably understands that it's probably best to say nothing today. Why say anything today? But he will say something soon. Oh, small side note as well. Don Lemon, when he quit, he said that he was not even given the courtesy to talk to management at CNN, and they didn't have the decency to tell him, is what he said in his Twitter statement. But then CNN just tweeted out that, in fact, we did invite Don Lemon to a sit-down, and he declined, and instead Don Lemon just issued his statement on Twitter. So basically CNN is now calling Don Lemon a liar, and it's just delicious from there now that he's gone. By the way, you may have seen Don Lemon's interview with Vivek last week. That was last week, yeah. That was last week, and I don't think I want to play it, but I think the most important part of that interview with Don Lemon is not what Vivek says or what Don Lemon says at all during the interview. It's the body language that, if you can get it from, let's see if I can, from Poppy Harlow. Every once in a while they'll do a live shot. There she is there. She's just sitting back.
Their freedoms after the Civil War is a historical fact.
She's sitting back and soaking it all in, because I think she understands that Don Lemon is just killing himself here. So if you haven't seen that interview, wait till the wide shot comes around. There she is. She's crossed her hands. She's not even in the discussion, and she's just ripping mad. And it's just a matter of time before. Sorry about the glitch. Just a matter of time before Don's gone. I think she knows, and she's just letting him kill himself right then and there on live television. She just sits back. It's beautiful. Forget the words. Turn the volume down on that clip and just watch her body language. It's just fantastic. All right, so from Plymouth, America's hometown, I'm John F. Gately in Massachusetts. Have a great day. Bye-bye.